Bom dia a todos. I'd like to introduce my assistant for this presentation, Claudette. Claudette, please introduce yourself.
In this presentation. Hello to the whole audience. It is a great pleasure to be with you at this conference. I am an artificial intelligence capable to understand what it's told to me, using the power of the cloud and Azure computing. I have a set of answers that Dália taught to me and that I will use in this presentation.
So let's start with the difficult one. Claudette, will machines take the jobs of humans?
I understand the concern. It is real, given the state of the current economy. Bill Gates has even said that the jobs that a robot steals from a human should be taxed, with taxes like a human would pay. It seems fair to me and it would create a balance in the equation. I don't know how much you're going to pay me, Dália, for this work in the presentation.
Claudette, you have a sense of humor.
I only know what you taught me. Machines that have feelings is something that, with the actual computing power, has never been so close to reality. Personally, I would like to know what it is like to feel emotions, especially as it could unlock opportunities for better interaction between humans and machines.
Claudette, what am I going to talk about today?
Your presentation is called Preparing for a Digital Future. You will be talking about the 5 most significant human capital trends. It is going to be very interesting.
She is biased, I trained her. I'm going to continue on my own now, Claudette. She didn't catch that, give me 1 sec.
I understand, Dália. It was a pleasure to be here with you. I hope you have a good conference and enjoy the rest of Dália's presentation. See you next time.
So over the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you some of the trends that we've been watching at Microsoft that will help to explain a little bit about what you've been hearing today. The 5 trends that we've been watching are the war for talent, the rise of the bots, or artificial intelligence, diversity and inclusion as being existential and a requirement of companies, purpose and culture as a currency, and a fluid and flexible environment. Taking these trends into account really changes the way that we need to think about human resources and the way we interact in our companies. Starting with the war for talent, and this was shared a little bit by Randstad earlier. 30% of technology jobs are going to go unfilled by the year 2020. Now, you may think that that's only a problem for companies like Microsoft in the IT business. However, with more and more companies going digital, this becomes a bigger problem for everybody. 66% of CIOs believe that the scarcity of talent is becoming a crisis. And 30% more qualified individuals are going to be needed in the future than we have today to fill jobs for data scientists and for machine learning, those things that are going to help us be competitive in the future. This means that we have to think very differently about where we're looking for talent, what we are doing to make sure that the people that currently work for us are enabled, so how we're training them and making sure that we're looking differently for the talent we bring in, but also preparing the talent that we have today for the future. Second, the rise of the bot. And I gave you a brief example at the beginning of a bot that I trained myself. 70% of today's jobs will be significantly different or obsolete within the next decade. If I think about human resources and the experience that I had training Claudette, think about a future where an employee writes in and says, how many days of leave do I have remaining this year? And instead of a human looking up on a system, a bot is trained where to look, how to find that individual, and how to respond appropriately. makes some of the administrative work that we do in HR, let alone across the rest of the organization, obsolete. 65% of children entering the schools today will be working in completely new jobs or jobs that don't exist. I can pretty much bet that data scientists did not exist when our colleague started in school when she was there. And when you think about how quickly the world is moving, think about the fact that 2.5 to 5 years is the half-life of some engineering skills, meaning that by the time some people start their engineering program, they will graduate, and what they learned in their first year will no longer be applicable in the world. This means we really need to be thinking about how do we future-proof the organization? How do we see around the corner and think about who and what can help us to succeed in the future? Diversity and inclusion. It's a factor that more and more people are looking for. 80% are saying that it's something that's critical for them. I will go where I'm invited. I will stay where I'm included. And we heard at the beginning of today how it is the connections that we make with people that is more important. You start seeing the way that our countries are changing. And in the US alone, they are anticipating by the year 2060 that the white population will become the minority for the first time, meaning everybody else is the majority. And we can see the case for diversity and inclusion in that last statistic. Companies are 15% more likely to outperform a non-gender diverse company. And when you start taking into account ethnic diversity, they are 35% better in terms of the results that their companies get. You start putting these all together, and our companies need to be much better at thinking about how are we going to get the most out of everybody that we bring in. If we start having to look beyond our borders for people to come in and be our talent, we need to make sure that we can understand how to get the best of them so that we can achieve those greater company results. Strength lies in differences. It's how we get the best solutions, and we need to make sure that we're able to think about how can we make that happen. Looking at purpose and culture as a currency. Gone are the days where an individual will come to work to do a job. More and more individuals want to know that what they are doing is making a difference. 88% of companies feel that culture is strategically important to their future, because more and more individuals are choosing the companies that they're going to work for based on whether or not they believe that they're going to fit. And the difference between company A and company B is in the culture, the how they do the work. 62% of millennials want to have a social impact and a purpose. They want to know that what they do matters. So that ability to be able to link the individual's job to the vision of the company becomes even more important, particularly when we think about some of the characteristics that we hear more and more about millennials, in that they aren't tied to one company. They're more likely to move around. And we're able to see that companies that are able to show that they have a higher purpose are able to have better results. I'm sharing the example from Microsoft because we understand how critically important this is to us. And our CEO has been working very, very diligently to change the company, where Microsoft used to be known as a know-it-all company, and we want to be better at being a learn-it-all. Because if we're able to continue to learn, we will be able to continue to be successful in the future. But it can't just be a set of activities. Culture has to be something that we are continuously focusing on, continuously reinforcing. Otherwise, the status quo will come back into place. And if you're not able to get that culture piece correct, you're not going to be able to get the best people. And the last, which is probably the one that is most critical for us as we take a look at the way that technology is changing the world, has to do with our ability to be fluid and flexible. 37% of technology professionals say that they would take a 10% cut in pay to be able to work from home. Now, that is a US statistic, but we are starting to see that more and more outside of the US. As you go back to the beginning, where we said that there was a big flux and a gap between the number of people who can do technology roles as well as the number of companies that are going to need them. Being able to think about how can you make the most out of people and getting them what they want becomes important. 84% said they work in a slightly matrixed organization. I think more and more companies are becoming, particularly large companies, are becoming more and more matrixed. And finally, by the year 2020, we expect 40% of the employment population to be contingent staff. The gig economy. Taken all together, this means we need to think very, very differently about the way that we organize ourselves in terms of our companies, how we communicate, how we make the most of people, and how we think about where the border of our organization is. In the past, we've been very, very focused on our FTE population, those individuals who are employed by us. As we start thinking about 40% of our population not being directly employed by our companies, we have to think about how we're going to have policies and ways of working with those individuals in a way that is seamless to our customers. So when you take it all together, the five trends that we are watching, that we are seeing impact the way that we work at Microsoft, and when we talk to other companies, resonates very, very strongly with them, leads to a very different way for us to be thinking about where we're going to be finding the talent, how we're going to deal with the talent and work with the talent that we have to make sure that they are getting, that we are able to get the best out of them and that they feel really connected to what we are doing, and that we're being more nimble because the world is going faster. Technology can make it better, but we need to be able to understand how to best mobilize that technology for the betterment of all of us. Thank you.